Welcome to Syntax. Today we have Tim and Jimmy on today. Tim is of course, the lead dev of Next.js, and Jimmy is the head of Next.js. And they're here to talk to us today about some cool stuff that they're rolling out around their adapters platform, which is going to allow you to host Next.js on different providers like Cloudflare and Netlify, as well as like different runtimes as well. Meaning, like if you want to use Node or Bun or whatever, you can do that. Conversation takes a little bit to get warmed up, but trust me, it's going to be worth it because these are some super smart guys, and I actually really enjoy this conversation. We talk about caching, Next.js performance. We talked about TurboPack and all the TurboPack internals and the whole process of building that. We, of course, asked them, why don't you just use Vite like everybody else is asking? And they had a really interesting answer to that as well, which is a maybe one day. And infrastructure, just like in general, like Next.js, of course, is code, but it's also, if you want it to run like Vercel, it requires a whole bunch of infrastructure. So we kind of go through that as well. Let's get into it. So the other day, you guys launched the adapter platform. Tell us about what that is.
Yeah. So we launched the adapters API as stable, which has been a long time coming, as you said. We've been working on it for close to a year at this point. And so the idea, right, is that we kind of Next.js by itself, it runs super well with Next.start, on a simple VPS, you can tap into all capacities of Next. But when it comes to kind of scaling it, it's always been maybe slightly more difficult, just because Next.js capacities, the features caching and ISR just requires synchronization across multiple nodes if you need it. So. Or with your CDN if you require it. And we basically introduced a layer so that you can basically tap into this and have a somewhat of a stable contract so that you can easily adapt it wherever you kind of want to host it. The adapters API, it's useful for yourself if you're just hosting just across 5 simple servers. You might not even want a VPN, a CDN or something.
Yeah.
But it's also useful if you're someone like Cloudflare or Netlify and you're hosting Next.js in a specific way with serverless lambdas, and you want potentially to host your middleware in a different way. And so we created that API as a need to answer the needs of the community. We also created an ecosystem working group, which is basically composed of us and partners across Google, Netlify, Cloudflare. We used to have AWS in the group, but they dropped out at some point. But the idea is that since a lot of the Next.js features require that level of, a certain level of infrastructure work to make it work well at scale, we basically creating groups so we can share ideas in advance, collect their feedbacks, and kind of, make sure that they don't dislike supporting Next.js on their own platform.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you've been working on this for quite a while now. So I take it then that this wasn't a knee-jerk reaction to the slop fork, right?
Yeah, not really. No. If you look back, we published the RFC a year ago, and maybe the timeline is quite fuzzy to me at this point too, because it's been so long. But we had started engaging with Netlify and Cloudflare and the OpenNext guys even a few months before that. So not really, no. Can't say it hasn't the slop fork term.
Yeah.
I think one of the main points there, right, is that the main reason why Cloudflare did this is that they kind of wanted to avoid some sort of vendor lock-in, and they wanted to make it somewhat easier to support some version of Next on Cloudflare. And so we did want to show to the community that we also, we had been cooking on this. It's a great timeline though, because we internally, this matched up with our own testing, we were the reason why it wasn't stable is just that we wanted all of our own websites to be working on this adapters API first before we published it. Yeah.
Yeah, so we've been dogfooding it for quite some time, outside of this release, right? This release is marking it stable, but we introduced I think it was beta at Next.js last year in October. But the reason that we hadn't marked it stable yet is that also we had been dogfooding it on our own application. So like we built the adapter for Vercel, and we had been rolling it out to like all like Vercel's own applications, like similar to how we do it for Next.js features, like in general. And that took some time because like we have a pretty large application, and like we wanted to iron out all the like issues that we had with this, like because for reference, like this. Like think about this like adapter that we had before was already like it had been battle tested across like 8 years or so. Like since we introduced like now V2, when we like introduced serverless functions into Vercel, and all of that, like this was still the same adapter from back then. So that all the like possible edge cases that you could find in like Vercel application, like Vercel version of Next.js, this new adapter was like from the ground up built on the adapters API. So we're really like dogfooding this like in the same way that like every other platform is. And because of that, like we had to do like some extra checks to make sure that like we can roll it out to everyone in this way. So yeah, like that's like why the timeline was also like spread out over a year instead of like, hey, we have this new thing.
Yeah.
Because in practice, like if you think about it, this like the adapters API inside of Next.js itself, like that's not that complicated. It's like a couple of functions that have like a typed contract. Like the real point is like, you know, have a integration layer that you don't have to like reverse engineer on any side of things, like not on Vercel, not on any other platform. Because like to be clear, like you could already host like Next.js on Netlify or Cloudflare or like through OpenX on AWS or things like that. But basically, like this new API makes it a lot easier for these platform teams to just integrate with Next.js directly instead of like having to like find which files need to be included in the serverless function and things like that.
Hack around it. It's like I was trying OpenNext on Cloudflare for quite a while, and I was like digging into it. It's during the early days of the OpenNext Cloudflare, so I was doing like bug reports and whatnot, and I was looking into it, and like a lot of it was just like regexes and taking the bundled output and like uncompiling it, and like I was like, oh, this really is just a bunch of hacks.
Yeah, finding the routes, like everything that Next.js like knows, like basically like all this like metadata around like what is a route, what is like how does it match, like that kind of thing.
Yeah,
that's not all part of the adapters API. Yeah,
and like let's talk about like the different pieces to this, because I think one of the reasons why it was historically hard to put Next.js on other platforms is because it kind of blurs the line between like this is a Node app, but also there's all of this infrastructure that needs to come along with it. And like you said, that special sauce of why it was so easy on Vercel was because like you guys have had your own adapter platform and have made it like line up with all the different pieces, right? You got CDN and databases and caching and all of that type of stuff. If somebody's like just looking at this right now, like what are the different pieces of infrastructure that are needed for like a Next.js app that uses every single feature under the sun?
The thing is, something that like I kind of want to try to dispel a little bit is that like a lot of what we're talking about, like the sort of like complexity that comes with like some of the Next.js features, those are like mostly sort of like additive compared to like the other frameworks. On its own, if you're just like, if you're just looking for a framework that kind of just like, server-side renders or just like, serves API routes and serves some like cached data, that stuff just kind of works out of the box, right? There's nothing, you don't need like crazy infra or anything to do, so you just need like a server that can return to your response. Where we go a bit further is when it comes to basically everything caching related. And then we've made kind of updates to our docs to kind of clarify this, but those things are mostly, I'd say, performance optimizations, right? Like partial pre-rendering, which is like one of the features that allows you to kind of serve like a static page and then kind of compose with like some dynamic contents.
I love those. I want those features. Those are great features.
Yeah.
And it works with Next.Start, right? Like you're gonna hit your server. It's gonna return like without rendering. It's just gonna return you the static HTML, and then it's gonna do like the render, right? And when it comes to Vercel, the way we kind of optimize for this is that this CDN, this HTML shell can be served from the CDN rather, right? Like closer to the user, and then we'll like invoke like the server in the background. This is like purely just taking the primitives that we've taken, that we've put in the framework, and then just like optimizing them. But so that, I think that answered the question a little bit, right? Like, I think to get like the Vercel-ish experience, what I would recommend anyone who's like adopting or adapters to get those features is you want your server close to your database, right? If you're doing like any reads, it's just like is the thing that makes sense in general. And then you want your static content always as close to the user as possible. And you need something that kind of handles the connection between the two. And it could be like on Cloudflare, it could be like a worker, right? And that worker would just like execute at the edge, return to you the CDN content, the static shell, and then like invoke another worker that is closer to the origin, basically.
Yeah. And even for this case, or like if you're talking about PPR, for example, like this static shell, like even if you serve that from a server that does dynamic rendering, so like if you serve it from Next.start, like it's still a win because like you still have this like immediate response. The only difference is that this response is not immediately coming from like a CDN per se, but it's instead like served from your like server that you have hosted. And that's the same way if you go to any other platform. It works in the same way. But what you can do like additively to that is like you can make it so that your CDN supports this like new primitive, like PPR, for example, and then it can serve that shell from the CDN itself while stitching the dynamic render as well.
There's like maybe the PPR part is like an optimization. I will say probably like something that I would consider kind of important and that we still want to make improvements on is the cache sort of like synchronization story, right? Let's say you're having like 5 servers are using Next, and like you might like start it with like Next.start on all your like instances. If you're like Next.js caching, like the pretty powerful thing about it is that like we allow you to kind of invalidate it whenever you want, and we do it in the background. And of course, whenever you call the sort of like revalidation methods, that one thing that is important for your provider or yourself is that like a validation is like just shared across all nodes. And so that's one of the things that we're making better with the adapters API, but we still got some work to do, I'd say.
Okay. And like when someone's like having a cache, like when like a page or a component is cached, where is that typically stored? Is that thrown into like a key value to file, or does it matter?
So we have multiple layers of caching, as you might see from the memes about our docs, right? We and I don't know if you have how familiar you are with like our cache components.
Use
like
cache
mode.
And all. I've many times said like I want that in every single thing. Like one of the reasons I'm such a huge React Server component fan is the ability to like fetch and cache and just do everything in the component rather than everybody else's like route layer, except for Svelte. Svelte is along with the synchronous now.
Yeah. And see the idea behind use cache and the idea and like why we chose like a very almost like generic kind of name for cache components is that we kind of want you to think about caching at every possible layers. So it starts like purely through the client. So if you use cache, you can actually add a property that will just say cache it on the browser, so that like across my session the page is like stored here, and I can configure like how long it should be kept around. Then it can also happen at like runtime when you server-side render your page. Now this cache can also live on your server across your request, and you can add like a time that you want to keep it around. We can also have this at build time and for static pages where now this cache page should live in your CDN too. And so there are multiple layers to it, but we think basically it allows you to build like the sort of most composable kind of app. Some pages, for example, it's fine if they live on the CDN, like and they're never really sort of like revalidate. And if you do so, you're doing it like kind of random, not randomly, but like occasionally, like a CMS or something. But those things don't matter, right? If you're like a page like in an app like ChatGPT where you would rather want to cache on the client instead. One thing I'm really excited about, for example, is that we want to extend the use cache or like layer so that we can have also like an offline kind of layer. So right now, like we can cache it on client across sessions, but the idea is like, what if we just like also kept it across reloads seamlessly, and then you would just be able to reload your page while offline, and then still have like the data from the session or something out of the box, right? Without having to do like potentially like a synchronization layer.
Right? Oh, that'd be cool. I like that a lot.
So a lot of the APIs that we're adding are like edited, like especially with cache components. Like there's like many things that we haven't like really talked about, like this offline thing that Jimmy's talking about. They're like right now they're building the foundation of what this like caching layer will look like. The other thing is like, well, Jimmy said that like we want you to think about caching in every layer. The default is actually to be like as dynamic as possible. So if you use like dynamic APIs, it will basically like it feel like how you were using like a service or props before, or things like that. If you use like date or things like that, things become dynamic still. And then you like basically the biggest change from like Next.js 13 and like the first like iteration of all this caching APIs is that we want you to just like build the app first and then you can start optimizing. Whereas previously you were already in this like optimized state by default, and that was like kind of confusing. So we really want you to like see these APIs as like additive, right? Like we want to add to use cache instead of like it's cached by default, or like you have to reason about that kind of thing. And then like when you want to add to use cache, like Jimmy said, you can do it everywhere. In the sense that like you can do it at the page level, you can do it at the individual function level, or at like components even. And that's something that was previously like not even possible. Like even in the first version, like we like it was either it's fully static or it's fully dynamic, and like it started with the static thing, and then like everything is cached. But now it's you have to opt into it, and it feels nicer in that way as well. Like when you're building the app,
And like, say somebody builds out a Next.js app, you know, a bunch of pages, bunch of components, does a whole bunch of stuff, and they say, okay, like I feel like the app is in a really good spot. Now I either want to move to using less resources or make the app a little bit faster. Now I'm going to start looking into cache. Like, what would be your first like couple steps of attacking like the lowest hanging fruit?
The nice thing about our model is that we still try to nudge you toward like making the choice as you develop. I think other different frameworks kind of have like this other sort of like maybe less opinionated way of developing. You can like sort of like you can start with like just client side fetching, and at some point, you do need to kind of invest into like optimizing your app, pulling it potentially into the server with a loader or something. While we don't cache for you by default anymore, a big part of like the programming model now on cache components is that like you'll write your code as like intended, but then like Next.js will kind of mention like with like a little like nice warning window, like, hey, either you need to add like a suspense boundary here so that you keep this thing dynamic, or you just cache it now with like use cache, and then you know it's like a simple drop-in directive, and you sort of like are set up from the get-go already, right? Because then it allows us to progressively do it. And so I think this is kind of like the nice part of with that's why I really like Next.js by itself. Right now, today, right, if you have like a slow Next.js app, the first thing I'd suggest, right, is like you're probably not on cache components, just because like it's somewhat very recent. Like we haven't like put as much effort as we could have into the documentation and the experience yet, right? But that's the first thing, right? That's what ups you into this. Hey, I'm gonna warn you about this little thing, and really take it from there. Read the use cache docs, right? Like no one likes having to learn about like a new directive here and there. And for most people, performance is also somewhat fine. But I think our idea is just whenever you're ready, we'll be there. Let's say.
Waiting for us. That's great, Jimmy. That's great. I like that.
Yeah, I'm curious about with your whole adapter pattern. Is there like a minimum subset of features that adapters need to support before considered to be like a blessed adapter by the Next team?
Yeah, it's a great question. Not really. So the idea is that I don't want to gatekeep necessarily on like whatever someone's platform is supporting or not. Sometimes like the thing with like PPR is that like it does require like a little bit of wiring if you want to do this at scale. And there's no right and wrong here. It's more like just like the users kind of should make their own choice. But one thing we do require as part of like the adapters working group, if they want to be blessed, is that they should just run our test suite. So we've made some work to make this available for everyone. In theory, you just you just plug in your API keys and like just like the pipeline on like how to just deploy it with like a few scripts here and there, and then you can just use our test suite in the same way Vinex has used it, and just basically assess how good your platform is at supporting Next. And even then, it doesn't really cover like it's not very like opinionated about like whether or not you're running PPR from a CDN or not. We don't really sort of like check for performance expectations here, rather than just like you load the page and it's just working as intended. It's not, but maybe it could be taking 20 seconds. I don't really care about this as long as the test pass.
And the other thing is like we're also not specifically gatekeeping on a amount of test passing. So what we did is we give you the test suite. The only thing we ask, so there's two sets of adapters, right? Like there's adapters that anyone could build, and there's the ones that are like part of the docs that we like explicitly mention, and then we also publish the results from the test suite for. This doesn't mean that you have to say like build an adapter for like any platform that doesn't pass like every single test, but it will split out by like in the test suite, like we keep track of like which feature, like which test is related to which feature, and then we publish like this adapter supports all features except for PPR, for example, or like it doesn't have like some other feature, and then it will like then you can choose for yourself like if you want to use the adapter or not.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's like basically like how we set it up. Like everyone in the working group is already working towards like they either published a adapter already or they are working on an adapter because they want to roll it out gradually as well. And that set of adapters will be part of this set that we're going to call out in the docs. And if there's like other platforms that want to do the same, like we have like a clear set of like this is what you have to do to set up the test suite and how you can like get your adapter part of this list as well.
And this is not just for like different hosting providers as well. It's also for different runtimes as well, right? Like there's already a bun adapter, which will then allow you to kick out, like obviously work with buns in, I think it uses bun's internal server. It has a bun SQLite database for caching, things like that. So this is not just like different, like only to run on Netlify or whatever, but it's also like if you literally have like a bun server sitting in your closet, you can use this.
Yeah, and so that's one case. The one that is really interesting to me as well is the Kubernetes one that Google is working on. Like basically that would allow you to scale the Nexus server like as is using Kubernetes. Yeah, we built together with Jared from Bun this like Bun adapter, also to prove out like that you can use the adapters API like for something different than just like a specific platform per se.
Yeah,
I'm curious to see what like people will build using this, because like you can do like more. Like I saw someone try to use the adapters API like right after it came out to like create like single single file executables that boot up the server and things like that.
Part of like why I was pretty excited about like pushing for the adapters API is that we kind of want to give you almost like full control over like everything Next.js can do and then what it allows you to do. Like so that at first that is targeted toward like platforms. But one of the things, for example, that we are planning on working on next with the Cloudflare folks is going deeper into the runtime story. Right now it works currently mostly for build. But when you're working on like something like well, with workerd, for example, there's a bunch of APIs that are not necessarily available from like based on Node, right? And so we want to. I think Vite has done something similar with their environment API. We kind of want to do the same thing, right? Allow you to have in dev as close of an experience as possible as what you're going to get when you deploy it.
So that's planned, because that was my next question of like one of the hugest pain in the butt with Cloudflare is that like if you are running Node locally and then you deploy the thing to Cloudflare, there's always this pain in the ass little things that come up. And the solution to that is like debugging it sucks because you got to like sit there, commit, deploy, wait for the thing to build, and they've solved a lot of that by allowing you to run like workerd locally, which means you can hit those issues right away before you deploy the thing. But you're saying so that eventually will come to this where you can use it different runtimes in dev as well?
Yeah, that's the idea, right? Because as a user, I also hate this, right? Like what we're driving really hard with the Next.js experience is that like dev start and when you push it on Vercel is behaves exactly the same. Like debugging capacities are the same, and like I just kind of want to push that forward in dev too. Like is what we're selling, with Next.js by itself is not like I'm not married to the idea of like Node. I'm not married to like workerd or like Bun as a runtime itself. Like what we're selling is APIs, just nicely done APIs, and like if like hopefully we don't like we don't like a lot of the stuff we do obviously is very targeted towards Node. Just because that's the main default. But like if it came a point where like Bun becomes like the natural like the natural like platform to which to build on JavaScript apps, then I would want Next to support that as well, right?
Does that mean you have to have all of TurboPack running on these other runtimes as well?
I think not. Depends on like there might be some limitations there, right? In terms of like obviously if you run like on a crazy OS that just doesn't support like our build of like TurboPack, then we do still kind of need some things. But TurboPack is mostly written in Rust.
So doesn't matter, right?
Yeah. So TurboPack like itself is you can see that it's like a separate binary that we're running, and we're compiling it to every like mostly supported like OS basically, right? So if you're using like a convoluted OS, then like that might be a problem. But like for like every like majorly used operating system, so like we're only talking operating system, right? Like runtime, like for example, like Bun, like you can use Bun for NextDev today because you replace it with Node, and that knows how to run this. Like it has the Node.js APIs to like interface with NAPI, so we can just like run everything as is. If that needed something slightly different or anything like that, we could still run it. That's not an issue. But yeah, Next.js, like Next.js itself, it's all mostly TypeScript, some JavaScript, and then the bundler is basically 100% Rust at this point.
But yeah, to be clear, we do rely on like pretty sort of like load-bearing APIs too, like async local storage, for example. And those things were like potentially either like they're like supported pretty well, or they might not be supported fully sometimes. And so in those cases, like that's where we need to do some work to either like try to abstract away some of our usage so that like then a platform could then plug in their equivalent or something.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, I think as we work with like Cloudflare on supporting cache components better, I think we'll obviously run into sort of like that kind of issues. Yeah.
Oh yeah. There was one weird thing with Cloudflare, like their implementation of async local storage doesn't. I'm just looking it up. Enter with you can't use, or something weird where you can't like bootstrap something with an existing object, which is kind of a bummer. But like that's also not really Next's. It is Next problem, but also like that's more of a Cloudflare problem, if they don't support those APIs.
Yeah. The idea is that we make as much as possible as we can on our end, but in the end, like it's still up to the platform to choose to invest into making it work. They control the runtime, right? So in theory, they can also do some work in advance here.
It is
Yeah.
similar across frameworks as well, because like if other frameworks use async local storage, you run into the same problem, right?
Yeah.
One question everybody has, and I'm sure you're sick of hearing this right now, so feel free to punch me. But everybody's like, why doesn't Next just run on Vite? And do you have any response to that? Because like I know making TurboPack was a huge feat, and I know its edge cases all the way down, and that's a very frustrating. I'm sure people think you can just boop 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 add Vite to it. But like, what are your opinions on that, or your responses to that?
If you're not watching, I just set up straighter. So we started building TurboPack. I can't remember which year. It's been some time. The reason we started building it is like for context, like we were using Webpack before, like most other frameworks at the time. And basically, like Webpack, it has some limitations. The main limitation it has is that it's single threaded. So it runs in it's mostly JavaScript, not TypeScript. It has a very extensive plugin API, but really the biggest like problem that we ran into as applications kept scaling. So like think about it this way: like if like Wes or Scott starts building a new application today, they're probably like pulling in like 10x more code than they were 10 years ago when we started Next.js.
Yeah.
So over time, like basically you start hitting this problem of like there's so much code to compile, now everything gets slower and slower. There were some takes on how to solve that problem, which included and then like Next itself also made this like this problem-ish 2x worse by having two compilers. So you're not running one Webpack, you're running two Webpacks. Like one Webpack for the browser, like your browser code, and one Webpack for your server code. So for like server-side rendering and all of that. Like we had to do that because like otherwise you can't run browser code that's like bundled for the browser in the server. Like your like type of window would be replaced or things like that. You couldn't do as many optimizations, like all of that. So you were basically like what Next.js was doing was like it was like trying to orchestrate multiple instances of Webpack and trying to make sure that they compile at the same time, they finish at the same time, they run in parallel as much as possible. But in practice, like, you can't really do that because like one might depend on the other. And then when you have React Server components, now you have this, like it's a scheduling problem, basically. Like you have use client, and the use client could import a use server, like a server action. And this, like the first file that you find is a server component. So like that's server code. So that's running in the server compiler. But the moment it finishes compiling, it has found all the, like it collects all the use client, and then it injects it into this like second Webpack instance. And it's like, hey, you know what? Now we're going to compile that. And then when that second instance runs and it finds all the use server, it now has to run the first compiler that we like triggered again to then like compile all this new code that we found. And basically, like that means that you're going from like server, client, and it can effectively recursively go through more than that, but we blocked you from doing that. In practice, you should be able to do that though. Like you should be able to import more client components that have more server actions and so forth. And this might be like this. The other thing that we want is to have server components that you can like import and render from like using use server, for example, in the future. And like this would basically make that like a compilation problem, right? So like we had this kind of like slowness problem, and it only got worse like as we added more like compilation work to it, and like this orchestration basically. So like that was the like really quick. That was like the problem that we had. Besides like the application getting a lot larger and like that also being a problem. So
You said really quick because you gave a whole explanation of the server component architecture.
Yeah. So that's like the problem, or like where we came from, right? I just want to clear that up because like it might sound very simple to say like, oh yeah, just like drop the bundler and do something else. So at that point, like we were like, okay, let's have a look at like where things are at in the overall ecosystem. Like what is everyone else doing? And what we find is like effectively every other framework was doing the same thing that we were doing, which is regardless of what bundler you were using, even if you were using more modern ones like like Vite or Rollup or like anything else. Effectively, they were all like, if you're building a framework that had multiple layers, so like server and client or things like that, they were all doing this orchestration issue. Like they were all compiling, like you had 2 Vite instances instead of 2 Webpack instances or things like that.
I have my personal Waku website, which is React Server Components. I think it has 4 Vite instances.
Yeah, it works in the same, like like everyone did the same thing, because like that makes sense, right? Like if you like if you're not building the bundler yourself, like you hit this thing where you're like, oh yeah, I need to run multiple of these because like I have multiple output targets or things like that. When I explained this, like I was only talking about server and browser, but you could also think about like Edge runtime or like all these other like output targets, right? Bun maybe, or things like that. You would have to like it basically becomes a problem where you're running like many instances. So yeah, so we looked at it at the time, which is multiple years ago now. Before there was like any, like the only other, I will give credit to Parcel. Parcel had this API where they could do server client, server client, server client. Like that was a thing that they had already added. You have a Webpack application, like your like existing Next.js application is like completely geared towards like you have all the Webpack specific APIs. So this means like dir name works in a certain way, new URL works in a certain way, like import meta works in a certain way, like all of these things.
All the resolvers of all the files work the same way. Yeah,
you've probably hit this thing like in the past where like Vite, for example, like they introduced, we're going to use these modules for everything. So now when you're migrating like a app that was built using Webpack and you're migrating to Vite, like you would have the same problem where you had to rewrite some of your code or things like that.
Yeah,
and there were more reasons for this, but like really like the problem that we had was like there's multiple compilers, there's like compat with the previous Next.js apps that we like, and we had millions at the time already, right? So this isn't like a small scale problem. Like if we gave you a lot of breaking changes, like now like millions of people have to do work to actually get to the latest version or like to use this like improvements. There were like no solutions out there at the time. So effectively it was a question of like, do we take existing bundlers and try to cram this like new features into them to make it work in this way? And then like work with this like other bundlers or things like that, or do we start from like take everything that we've learned from all these like the other bundlers, because like a lot of the like say Vite is like built on like a lot of this like knowledge of like mistakes that were made for Webpack, for example, right? Or things like that. So can we take like all of these learnings from building all these different platforms, and then like a lot of people that came into Vercel, like people that came from Svelte and all of that, like take all of this knowledge and then build something new that takes like learnings from everything that came before, similar to how most new open source projects are built. So that's like where we started, and that's how we started building TurboPack. And then we had this, like pretty quickly we had like a fully functional bundler. You take inputs, you create outputs, it runs transforms, like all of this. That was actually not the hard part. Like building a like bundler, like we know how to do this, and we hired all the right people to work on it, and we had that pretty quickly. So a like create React app type app was like we got to that point pretty quickly. The problem was that and why it took like quite some time to get like fully to like 100% of Next.js tests passing is that Next.js has a lot of tests, like I think like 11 to 13,000 tests if you take like both dev and build.
Cloudflare knows about those tests, yeah.
So like this test suite is super large, but it tests all edge cases. That includes things that bundlers would usually be testing. So it includes HMR, it includes fast refresh, it includes like all of these edge cases, every bundler feature. Because when I was building Next.js like fairly early on, we were just like every single edge case that we ran into, like instead of just like upstreaming every like test that we have for that, we also added a test just in general to make sure that it keeps working in Next.js. Because like we were doing this orchestration thing, like I explained.
Yeah.
And you would hit issues with the orchestration itself, which means that it's not a bundler issue, it's actually a Next.js issue. So we already had this like very extensive test suite of like how a bundler should behave. We basically had to go through and like fix every single edge case so that it behaves in the same way or super close to what it was doing before, including a lot of the behaviors that Webpack has. So an example here is there's a comment called Webpack ignore true that you can add into an import. I'm not sure if you've ever seen it. That makes it like ignore the import when bundling. A lot of NPM packages have that, for example. I had never seen it before myself, but as we started building this, like obviously ran into it because like TurboPack would start bundling it, for example. I found out like other frameworks also start, or like other bundlers also start bundling it. But then in Webpack, it would like just ignore it and like there would be no compiler error whatsoever. So we have like in TurboPack, we have support for like a lot of these like Webpack specific APIs as well. And we make sure that like for the most part, your application, like you don't have to rewrite like a lot of things to get to this newer version. So that covers this like millions of people case. At the same time, what we've seen, like while we were building this, like other like vendors, they kept innovating as well. There was RSPack that tries to like implement the whole like Webpack API interface, while giving you this like parallelization and like better like slightly better bundling and like parallelization. And at the same time, also you saw the Vite team build rolldown, which is really cool as well, which has like a lot of the, like it takes a lot of the same learnings that we had for TurboPack. So like in practice, like the way I feel about it today is like that all of these vendors have started to sort of like converge onto a similar type of feature set. And the way they work is actually very similar. The only difference is like trade-offs that you make around like caching, like incremental compilation, like things like that. So for something I didn't talk about for TurboPack specifically is like we went all in on this like incremental compilation architecture. So similar to like Salsa in Rust or things like that, which is like you can annotate functions that are cached automatically and parallelized automatically. And this was especially important for us because like we were also seeing, besides like the new apps are 10x larger, the existing apps became 10x larger as well. And we want this incremental compilation. Like basically we want everything to be incremental compilation. So this means if you're in a build, like the first build, like the very first time might be slow or slower than like any other bundler, for example. But after that, we have every single thing that it did cached. And if you make another build, it's a lot faster. So it's, for example, like if you have an application that's like super large, like 100,000 plus modules or things like that, and it might take like a minute to build or something like that, the incremental compilation would be a few seconds to get to like this the next build after that, basically. And it would be like every build after that is just faster than the very first one, and you like rarely hit this like I'm starting from scratch case.
Yeah.
And similarly, we want that to be the same for development, right? So like if you boot development, you make your changes, you do like hundreds of HMRs, you quit the server, and then the next day you boot it up again, and it should be as fast as it was like getting a HMR, for example, like a fast refresh.
That always drives me nuts when people post like, oh, it took Vite booted up in like 3 milliseconds and the first load of my next app took like 20 seconds or something. Like that always drives me nuts when people don't understand how that works. Like my own personal Waku website takes like 30 seconds before I can actually, they even like console log the URL. And then after that, it's fine, you know, but that always drives me nuts. I'm sure it drives you nuts as well when people post stuff like that.
If you compare frameworks, if you're looking at you boot up and you see a URL. So for example, you boot up like any other framework, and it says like localhost 3000, right? And then it says like ready in like some time, for example, like 12 milliseconds or 50 milliseconds or something like that. In Next.js, it would say 500 or like 1 second or something like that. What we found is, or like what I found like looking into this, because I was like confused about like does like no other work happen? It's just like for us, it was like a timing issue. Like we would load the Next.js config, for example, which might be including like all your like external plugins, like Sentry or things like that. And would be requiring all of those before it actually said like, hey, let's like the server is ready. It took this much milliseconds. So recently we optimized that by first logging out all of this, like the server is ready type logging, and then like requiring the config and things like that in parallel, basically. And there were like some like interesting optimizations of how this like perceived performance is there as well. And then
have you considered just faking the numbers? Just
never. No, I would not.
Volvo.js, I think that was. Yeah. That's great. By the way, I just looked it up, and that Webpack magic comments was me. I opened the issue on that. I was running into a weird issue where I had like a dynamic import, and in Webpack, when you have dynamic imports, it gets everything, right? And I had like a video in the same folder, and it was like loading the entire video and then crashing. That was a weird one. I'm sure you run into all people doing stupid stuff.
Yeah, and on top of that, there was just like the test suite had a lot of these cases already. So like it might be that like Wes from like 8 years ago had already reported this issue, and like we had a test for it, right? Like there was a lot of cases like that as well. Things that we would have never caught without this test suite.
People using it in weird ways.
There is a bit of pros and cons of like, sort of like maintaining a framework for so long, is that like the battle tested sort of like features that we have, they're like the things that are almost like slowing us down. Because you could start like a new framework today, right? And actually you go to kind of Vite, and it would look like it works, and then you kind of don't have like the burden of like sort of like maintaining too much. But eventually at scale, what we found over the years is just that there are sort of like many cases that kind of tend to pile up there. And I feel like the big TLDR of like why we have gone for TurboPack at first is just like what's really important for our team is that we just keep shipping as fast as possible. And so it could be like a symptom, like it could be, I don't know if you heard about the term of like sort of like not invented here kind of problem, where if you go at Google or Meta, they have like every version of like what you use externally, but like built, purpose made for their own system, because it's just actually, if you have the resources, it is just always the fastest solution. And kind of like what we were saying earlier, right, is like Next.js on its own, somewhat simple, right? You could take our test suite and try to recreate it, some parts of it, and you could get somewhat pretty far on your own, right? And like Tim said, we spent like just an insane amount of time just trying to make sure it wasn't like a breaking change. Now maybe the juicy part I can share here is like we're not married to Node or Bun or anything. Like what matters more is the experience that we kind of provide to our users. In the same way, like for example, we used to ship with like a lint command that used to kind of just like bundle ESLint, because that was like the industry standard at the time. We've kind of reconsidered, and like we're just not doing anything, but we might consider a word where maybe we should run around like biome or something like this. And in the same vein, transparently, like every year we ask ourselves, like do we want to sort of like try exploring Vite? Do we want to sort of continue TurboPack? Are we working with the RSPack folks? Like what's the best end result, right, for our users? And the big blocker was really just the amount of work that it would take to kind of make this like a non-breaking change. There was also just the fact that like there's nothing, I think, that like pushes a bundler as much as like Next.js today, because we talked about like server components, server actions, cache components. Like you said, there's like Waku does some stuff today, but like I don't think there's quite something that has to support quite like as many sort of like larger websites there. And so if we wanted to find out, I think we kind of need to spend like a lot of time into exploring this ourselves. And I think the very latest here is just like maybe in the age of AI, maybe this is like very doable, right? Maybe we can like finally have like an answer to the would like Next work better on Vite. I think it's definitely still like an open question.
Oh, cool.
On our end.
Oh, that's good. That's good. And is TurboPack part of like the Next repo now? Like, are other projects using TurboPack, or is this just a Next thing now?
Right now, it's part of the Nexus repository. It is a fully standalone tool that you can run. The only thing is that we haven't added a public API for this yet. The reason for that is that we wanted to really like prove out that like this bundler has a right to exist, that it can like run on these like Nexus applications, and that doesn't have like any like bugs on bundling like npm packages and things like that. We're past that point at this point, and we do have like a CLI for it now. The only thing is like figuring out like how to like what the public API looks like, and then especially like one of the things that's missing is like we can run like Webpack loaders, for example, and things like that. Like we don't have a plugin API specifically for TurboPack right now, and that's like what we're currently exploring as well, like what that will look like. Then there shouldn't be a reason that you can't run TurboPack. But right now, like if you wanted to use it, for example, like there is like another bundler called U2, like UTOO. So U2 is like another like framework / bundler that's built on top of the TurboPack core. And they're like using it very successfully. They're contributing back to TurboPack as well because they're using it in this way, and they're building like pretty like large applications on this. And it's so like there's no reason that you shouldn't that you wouldn't be able to use this as a standalone bundler, like in the same way that you would use ESBuild or Vite or anything like that. Really, like it's on us to add like a public API for this. And really, the only reason we haven't yet is like we want to be really intentional about like we want to support that thing if we put it out, and give the right level of support there.
Cool. You should make the API just the Vite API. Do a little switcheroo on them.
We've been talking about that as well because like Vite has a pretty decent API. The only thing that we've been like thinking about there is like there's some like parallelization concern as well regarding that, but it should be doable. Like it's not like the individual pieces are very similar. There's also the like unplugin like NJS API that might be good as well because there's a lot of like plugins that are already written using unplugin, which is like it basically bridges. You could basically think of unplugging like Open Next for like Webpack loaders and plugins or like a similar API because it bridges like this like every adapter to like one single unified API.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Do you think we'll ever see that like like web request and whatever has been fairly standardized across everything? Do you think we'll ever see that for like bundler tools?
It kind of depends because like the bundlers themselves are quite different, but as I just told you, like they're a lot more aligned at this point in the way that they work. I think for like transforms, for example, like transforms are a really like basic like source input, some metadata, and then like return and output. Like and plugin like gives you like a standardized API for that. Like having like one standardized API across like all bundlers would be possible there. The only question is like getting it to like everyone to agree on like this is the one thing that you should do.
That's the hard part, standards.
And
Ever heard about web components?
Yeah, exactly. Good point.
So it's really it's that, and then plugins is slightly different because like the way that the bundlers work under the hood is like very different. Like TurboPack is nothing like Webpack under the hood. Like it works completely different. There's different phases. There's like the way that it works is just completely different. So like for plugins, like for example, you could write a plugin in Webpack today that like reorders chunks or something like that. Like it gets like access to all your modules, and you can put the modules in different chunks or create like extra chunks or things like that. Like having a like in TurboPack, we want to have like a more intentional API for this because otherwise, like, it's very easy to introduce like very large slowdowns or like single point of failure bottlenecks, basically, where things get a lot slower. And then, like, naturally, because like having a plugin API, it allows everyone to like add these plugins. Like, it would very quickly become like everything gets a lot slower for every app or things like that. So we want to be very intentional about like what are the APIs, how are they surfaced. Like similar to we didn't talk about this, but Adapters has a specific log line in the build that will show you how long the adapter took, instead of like that time being attributed to Next.js internals or things like that.
You got me diving into this U2. It's from
really interesting.
Alipay,
Yes.
by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, I forgot which company built it. Yeah.
That's really interesting. That's whole Chinese JavaScript is like a whole different world,
Yeah.
It's crazy. They have some pretty cool tools.
This is kind of why we had started working with RSPack last year to and it was like this. We had the same realization, right? They just kind of introduced us to how how ByteDance kind of compiles their own apps internally, and in some ways they have they might even have like the largest set of like Next.js apps that like the world will never see. I don't know how many engineers that they have over there. They kind of showed us like the other sort of like frameworks, and it turns out there was like another framework that was also like very much like very similar to Next.js internally. And those companies are so big that they can have like 4 web infrastructure teams. It's always really fascinating to see. I wish we shared more there.
Yeah, it's one of the best talks I've had. Or I watched was Zach Jackson. He's one of the devs on RSPack, and he works for ByteDance. We had him on the podcast as well, and like, man, that was fascinating to get a peek into how some of these big companies work and their infrastructure. And I'm sure you guys hear from it as well, as like, if you can save them like 1%, that's sometimes just like millions of dollars a year in productivity and compute and server time, all that stuff.
For sure. There's also something that we didn't touch on is like this whole strategy of like building TurboPack and giving it out to everyone using Next.js as the default and like very compatible has actually paid off, because like on Next.js 16 there's like 92% of the like development sessions are actually using TurboPack.
Awesome.
It's like the rest is like Webpack customization, basically, like people that have like customized their Webpack config, and they might still be able to use it today, because like if you're only using Webpack loaders, you can already add them to TurboPack and they will just run for like, I will not say like every loader runs, but like most of these like simple input output transforms, they work for sure. Yeah.
Beautiful. Cool. Anything else we didn't cover before I know we're running up on an hour here, but I want to make sure if we covered everything you wanted to touch on.
Yeah. No, I think we're good.
So now is the part of the show where we get into sick picks. Tim, I know you've been on the show before, so you know what a sick pick is. Jimmy, it's really just anything you're enjoying in life right now. Could be as like a podcast or a YouTube channel or any type of product, a phone charger, hula hoop,
car,
whatever you want. Yeah.
I should have asked for sponsors before. I really like. I don't know if you guys are like much into like coffee beans or not. I feel like a lot of like engineers are overall. But there's this shop that's, I think it's based in California. It's called like Hydrangea. But their coffee beans are amazing. If you like, sort of like really really light, almost like experimental kind of coffee. Very fruity. I'd recommend it.
Oh,
this is
it's
cool.
like the Hydrangea coffee roasters. They're like the flour.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yes.
This looks great.
Beautiful bags too.
Tim, what do you got for us?
I still remember this section from last time. Last time I called out Apple TV because of sci-fi mostly.
Oh yeah.
I will call it out again. If you're into sci-fi, Apple TV is so good. But that's not the one I want to call out. So I'll do 2. So the second one is Choir Podcast. I think y'all at Sentry are also sponsoring it, because I hear the segment every time. it's this podcast. If you haven't heard about it, it's pretty popular. So you might have heard about it if you're into podcasts. But they do like 4-hour, 5-hour to like even longer podcasts. They talk through the history of companies and how they started, where they're at now, like the whole thing. That if you're into any of the history of like Microsoft or Google or like any other company, it's definitely a nice listen. And I usually like put it on when during chores or whatever, and then time just flies by. The one that I found super interesting is the interview with Steve Ballmer, because like Steve Ballmer has such a like crazy, and like I've never like listened to anyone that has that much energy like for like 2-3 hours straight, just like talk about everything.
Acquired is really
I'm gonna
good.
watch this. This looks awesome.
I really like the Hermes episode and the what was another one? The Costco episode, and the Porsche one was really good, Wes. If you haven't listened to that, because Doug DeMuro is a guest on it. So
cool. No, I'm definitely gonna check that out. Sick.
Yeah, really good.
Awesome. Shameless plugs. Anything you'd like to plug to the audience before we head ways?
I kind of would like for the audience to kind of read the blog post about like that we kind of publish about the adapters. Because I feel like not a lot of people kind of read those kinds of like blog posts, and we put a lot of efforts into it. But also, I think it's really interesting about like kind of how we came together, right? Like because it does sort of like it establish a little timeline about how we work, and like more importantly, I think like kind of the engagements that we're kind of having with the group, like what are the exact roles that we want to have like around the adapters, and like just sort of like how we do kind of care. Like actually care about like making Next.js work well everywhere, and like I think it's a nice blog post.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
We'll link it up in the show notes.
Yeah, awesome. For me, it's Next.js 16.2, jokingly called Snow Leopard by a lot of people. So it's this new release that we did 2 weeks ago. It includes adapters, but it includes so much other things. Like it includes like up to 60% faster rendering. Like this is faster dev startup that we talked about. The server actions are now logged when you call them in development to make it easier to see like, what's happening there. Like we added so many things into this that we had to write 3 blog posts to cover it.
Hydration diff indicator.
Yes, so if you we already had a hydration diff, but now it includes the text of like what is server and client. But it was good to call it out again because like apparently not everyone had seen it before. It's basically like if you have a hydration error, it will show you exactly what was the cause of the hydration error, or like at least like the place where it happens in your code.
Yeah.
And then what else? Oh yeah, so we're doing a lot of research into what do frameworks look like with AI. As it's probably on your mind as well, like you're using like AI agents and like things keep improving quite rapidly, and like we built this like first version that was like a Next.js MCP, but now we're also looking at this like agent browser, and if you haven't seen that yet, like look up agent browser. It's really interesting as well. And basically like we wrote a separate blog post called Next.js 16.2 AI improvements, and that talks about like a bunch of the learnings that we had from like building like frameworks for like AI agents next to humans building on Next.js, and includes like one of the learnings is that like if you add an agents.md that has like a small snippet that knows where to look for the docs, that it will suddenly become like significantly better at figuring out like where it had to await your search params, or how to like write a Next.js structure, or like some code that it was previously adding use client to, we didn't add use client to anymore. And we've been doing a lot of research into that, which is super interesting. We should probably talk about it like another time.
Yeah.
But it's that was my shameless plug. Yeah.
Sick. Awesome. Sick. Well, thank you guys both for coming on. Thank you for all your work on Next, and I'm pretty excited about this. Appreciate all your time.
Thank you for having us.
Peace.
Yeah, thank you so much.